NBA free agency will always revolve around the huge free agents. Leborn James, Kevin Durant, Paul George, and DeMarcus Cousins for this season, for example. And where these players sign is extremely important to the makeup and future of the NBA. But where some of the less sought after players end up is just as important. Signing underrated players to cheap deals is a fantastic way to improve an NBA team and increase their chances of winning a championship or having deep playoff runs. Golden State was a great example of this in their early days, signing Andre Iguodala and Livingston to good deals and using them to anchor their bench units. This video will take a look at the available free agents this season and who is the most underrated out of them, which team should take a look at them, and why. First up is Marcus Smart, a restricted free agent who is currently with the Boston Celtics. Smart has struggled with shooting for his whole career, with career percentages of 36% from the field and 29% from three. With such bad shooting stats, you might be wondering how on earth is this guy underrated? There are a multitude of reasons, but for me it comes down to his defense, his leadership and energy, and his offensive skills, which I think are actually underrated. His defense is by far and away his best skill, as Marcus is one of the best defensive players in the NBA and potentially the best guard defender in the league. Smart is strong, quick, and uses an incredible amount of energy and hustle to harass and keep up with the best defensive players in the NBA. But it isn't just physical tools and energy when it comes to Smart and his defense. He knows the tendencies of players and teams at an extremely high level. You can see this in the way that Smart plays angles, setting up his defensive stances in ways that limit a player's favoured side. If a player favours one side of the court far more, Smart will adjust his stance to effectively seal this off, forcing the opposition into discomfort and gaining an edge in any way that he can. And this desire to gain an edge in any way possible translates into his leadership and energy off of the bench. A player of Smart's level could easily demand that he start for a team, but Marcus was in some ways better off of the bench, using his presence to extend leads or spark comebacks when things hadn't gone well for the Celtics to start the game. Smart will dive for loose balls, push for every single rebound, and just make plays that most players simply don't use their energy for or don't have the commitment to make. These kinds of plays add up over the course of a game and add a ton of value to a team. And then there is Smart's offense, the skill which is easily thought to be worst at. But I've watched a lot of Marcus Smart, and even with his poor shooting, he still contributes on the offensive end. Smart has two main skills that he uses to generate offense: his post-up game and his pick-and-roll game. Marcus developed into a very effective pick-and-roll ball handler, especially when he shares the court with Al Horford or another skilled big man. He comes off the screen and manages to get his defender trapped behind him, and this forces the defense to help, either from the corner or help off of the rolling big. Smart is then great at hitting the lob pass and the kick-out pass to the open three-point shooter. He can also hit a little floater/runner, which allows him to excel in the paint when he gets there off of the pick and roll. The other area of offense is when teams put a smaller guard on Smart. He is fantastic at taking them into the paint and posting them up for an easy basket. He can draw and pass out of double teams to create more open looks for his team, and combining these two skills, he manages to rack up assists when on the court really well. So even though he is a poor shooter, his ability to run a bench unit's offense in a calm and considered manner is really valuable, and allows him to play 30 plus minutes a game without ruining a team's ability to score. Clearly Smart is a great player, and teams will take a long look at him this offseason. But the Boston Celtics will be keen to retain one of their best defenders and on-court leaders, and I imagine it would take an offer sheet of over $12+ million before Danny Ainge would consider not matching it. One team that could potentially make a move for Smart is the Phoenix Suns. They have a hole at point guard, and Smart's ball distribution and defense could make him a good match next to Devin Booker. Plus, they have the skill and shooting to ensure that there is still a lot of spacing on the court with Marcus there. And Smart's leadership would be fantastic for a young core that has a lot to learn about winning in the NBA. Overall, a lot of teams will be taking a look at Marcus Smart, but I think his lack of shooting and the uncertainty of how he'll play outside of Brad Stevens' system will deter teams from giving him a huge offer, and for this reason I predict he will stay with Boston. Next up is a player who I think is incredibly underrated across NBA fan bases, Kyle Anderson. He was nicknamed Slow-Mo when he came out of college, and his lack of quickness up and down the court makes for a player who can look out of place in the NBA at first glance. But over his time with the San Antonio Spurs, he has developed into a very, very solid two-way player who can start or come off the bench. Anderson's calling card has actually been his defense. This season he ranked 3rd in the NBA in defensive box plus minus and 6th in defensive rating, all while averaging 1.5 steals and 0.8 blocks a game. But his defense doesn't just stand out on the stat sheet. he more than passes the eye test. Despite his lack of pace when getting up and down the court, Anderson is surprisingly quick when moving laterally. He uses this quickness to stay in front of players and constantly harass them on the defensive end with his arms. It is this quickness combined with his sizable frame that gives him the ability to guard shooting guards, small forwards, and even some smaller power forwards. It also allows him to switch easily in a defensive scheme without sacrificing the team's ability to guard players. And this switching ability has become key in the NBA in terms of defensive scheming, and I imagine a lot of playoff teams will be considering trying to snag Anderson from the Spurs. Because not only can Anderson play defense, he is a more than capable offensive player as well. This past season he averaged 7.9 points, 5.4 rebounds, and 2.7 assists a game to go along with his great defensive stats. He also shot over 50% from the field and was solid from deep, shooting 33.3% from behind the three-point line. Anderson is a jack of all trades and master of none kind of player. He can run pick and roll, post up, shoot from three, but he doesn't dominate in any of these areas. But this varied skill set is fantastic for a player who is the 4th or 5th starter or a bench player. Anderson was the glue guy for this San Antonio Spurs team. He made solid passes, ran pick and roll, and stood in the corner when Aldridge posted up, and just made sure he was doing whatever was necessary to maximize his team's chances of winning. Playoff teams will seriously be considering Anderson, and I could see Houston, New Orleans, and the Pacers and the Bucks, and practically any team with cap space and a desire to reach the playoffs going after Kyle Anderson. His varied skill set allows him to join any team and fit in at the small forward, or simply come off the bench for 25-ish minutes a game. Kyle is the perfect style of bench player also. His defense helps prevent other bench units going on long runs, and his consistent and smart offensive skill set ensures that his team get good looks even when the stars sit. But like Marcus Smart, Anderson is a restricted free agent, and I imagine the Spurs will match most offers unless a team goes above and beyond and simply pays him way too much. The third player on this list is our first unrestricted free agent, Tyreke Evans. And being an unrestricted free agent will make a huge difference to Evans and how many teams will chase him. Teams are much more likely to go after unrestricted free agents, as if they can convince them to sign with them, there is nothing their current team can do about it. When teams offer money to a restricted free agent, that player has to accept the offer. Then that current team has 72 hours to consider whether or not they will match this offer. Before this team decides, the offering team can't spend the money they offered on any other player. It is therefore super risky to do this early in free agency, and most teams wait until the end of free agency to make offers to restricted free agents. So Tyreke will benefit from this. Playoff teams that don't think they are a good chance at securing Leborn James or Paul George's signature will consider going after Tyreke Evans. He came off his best season outside of his rookie year and looks to have his confidence back alongside a newly added three-point shot. Tyreke played 30 minutes a game for Memphis this past year and scored 19 points, grabbed 5 rebounds, and dished out 5 assists a game. This is simply great production, and teams that are after a point guard or an incredibly versatile bench piece will take long looks at Evans. The biggest reason for his rise back in value is the three-point shooting. Before his last 3 seasons, Evans could hardly shoot threes and averaged around 30% from deep on low volume, instead focusing his game on getting to the rim and shooting from mid-range. But the NBA changed its priorities as Tyreke's career moved on from his rookie year. Three-point shooting became a must, and mid-range and slashing ability decreased in value. Because of this, Evans became less and less valuable, and when combined with his injuries, many wondered whether his career would slowly burn out. But Tyreke locked himself away in the gym and added the 3-ball to his game, shooting 38%, 36%, and 40% from deep over the last 3 seasons. This added skill reopened the game up for him in Memphis and allowed him to get a lot more game time. Initially, teams kept sagging off of him, and Tyreke would just shoot threes and make them pay. Finally, when teams began to step up to his shot, Evans found himself with a world of space on the NBA court once again, and he used it to get past his defender and into the paint, where he finished with the flair he was once known for and dished it out effectively to his teammates. Evans can play point guard, shooting guard, and small forward, and playoff teams that need extra ball handling for their bench will take a good look at him. I could see a team like Houston or the Pacers taking a long look at Tyreke. For me, Houston is one of the most interesting potential destinations, as they desperately need someone to play point guard off the bench and allow Harden and Chris Paul some more rest in the regular season. Then he can also play small forward and even some small ball 4 in the Rockets' fast-paced offense. So if the Houston Rockets strike out on Paul George or LeBron James, maybe look for them to take a long look at Evans. But wherever he ends up, Tyreke will contribute. as he's begun to tap back into the talent that saw him put up one of the most dominant rookie seasons in NBA history. After Evans, we have another unrestricted free agent, Derrick Favors of the Utah Jazz. Favors has played his entire career in Utah and started as a solid power forward in his early years before transitioning to being able to play both power forward and center. But the emergence of Rudy Gobert and a few injuries saw Favors fall behind Gobert in terms of the best and most used big man on the team. It meant Favors got less touches and minutes and wasn't as close to the basket as he would like to be in order to maximize his talent and athleticism. There was a stretch this season where Rudy Gobert was injured and Favors took the court as the starting center and played most of his minutes there, and he excelled. He was incredibly hard to stop on the offensive glass and thrived when facing up on bigger and slower centers. He still has the athleticism that saw him get drafted so highly, and as he plays himself back into shape, more and more of this will come back. And Favors is still the fantastic defender he has always been, whether he plays the 4 or the 5. But again, with the movement of the NBA to a smaller ball, he is more suited to using his quickness and strength to guard 5s. Derrick is a monster at blocking shots from the weak side, is fast at getting his hands into passing lanes, and can rise up to block the shot of the player he is guarding one-on-one. And as mentioned, he is fantastic on the glass, boxing out well and using his athleticism and rebounding knowledge to grab boards and end possessions for other teams. But the market for Favors on playoff teams might not be as high as he would like. A lot of playoff teams have decent big men or have spent too much money on their bigs to justify a big payday to another young big man. A team I could see going for Favors is the Milwaukee Bucks. They might have John Henson on their roster, but he is far inferior to the athletic and strong Favors. Derrick could slot into their 5 spot and help to anchor their defense behind the already strong wing defense of Giannis, Bledsoe, and Middleton. Then he could space the floor with his long 2s, set strong screens, and crash the offensive glass when teams double and triple Giannis. But the Bucks won't have tons of money to offer Favors, and a team like the Brooklyn Nets could come in and offer Derrick bigger money in order to come to a worse team. And Favors would fit really well in Brooklyn. Sure, they have Jarrett Allen, but he is incredibly young and raw, and the two could share center minutes quite easily. Favors would be an injection of experienced talent that they desperately need and would give their guards someone skilled to run pick and roll with. But whatever happens, I expect Favors to leave the Jazz due to limited opportunities, and I would expect him to take the most money possible, as it might be one of the last opportunities for him to cash in a big check. And the 5th and final player on this list is Kyle O'Quinn. O'Quinn is also an unrestricted free agent who is coming off playing 3 years for the New York Knicks. In this time, Kyle developed into a really talented and versatile bench big who can anchor a bench unit with his energy, great passing, and physical style of play. In this past season, O'Quinn came off the bench and played around 17 minutes a game, but he made the most of every single minute, and as a result was 49th in the league when it came to win shares per 48 minutes, placing him in the top tier of NBA players when it came to total impact and time on the court. Now this stat would drop if he played more minutes, but it shows the impact that Kyle can have on a game when playing against opposing bench bigs. This level of play starts for O'Quinn in his ability to come into a game with a huge amount of energy. He uses this energy on the defensive and offensive glass, but keeping him off the offensive glass can be particularly difficult. Kyle has a huge frame and other bench bigs struggle to contain it. He also has great hands and can latch onto rebounds over his head, to his side, and quickly get them back up for another shot. And when he does grab a rebound that he can't get up for an easy shot, Kyle is great at passing out of the paint to cutters or shooters if the defenses collapse too much to try and get the rebound. And passing is an area where O'Quinn excels overall. He averaged 2 assists a game in his 17 minutes, a rate which is simply fantastic for any big man, let alone a bench big. The Knicks would give him the ball in the mid-post or elbow areas and then cut hard around him. And O'Quinn would reward these cutters with great handoffs, over-the-head passes, and bounce passes into the lane. It was a very simple action that allowed the Knicks bench to create good looks. O'Quinn will create a different kind of market than Derrick Favors. Teams will want to try and lock him up for around $5 to $8 million a year for 3 or 4 years and secure him to help in a playoff run. He makes for a fantastic bench big on a good team and is good insurance for if one of the key bigs on a team gets injured. O'Quinn can easily step up and fill in a starter's role. For this reason, I think teams like the Spurs, Pacers, Celtics, Bucks, and Philadelphia will take a look at the veteran big man to try and add depth and experience to their team's bench, while New York will likely also try to retain him, especially due to not taking a big in the draft and having only Kanter and Noah as true centers on their roster. So there you have it, 5 of the most underrated free agents for this coming season. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more NBA videos in the future. And let me know in the comments which teams you think these players should go to, and discuss any other underrated free agents there as well.